Amara got the call on a Saturday evening. It was her mother-in-law, sounding unusually polite. She said, "Amara, we're having dinner tonight for your father-in-law's birthday. You and Tun should come." Amara's heart lifted a little. Things had been tense between her and Tun's family for months, and she saw this as a chance to fix things. She wanted peace. She wanted to feel like part of the family again. She spent hours getting ready, choosing a soft blue dress she knew Tun liked. She wrapped the gift carefully, a leather wallet his father had admired once. On the way to the restaurant, she kept rehearsing what to say, how to smile, how to make the evening pleasant. But as soon as they arrived, something felt wrong. The air was heavy, quiet in a way that made her chest tighten. Nobody met her eyes. Tun's mother gave her a stiff smile, the kind that didn't reach her eyes. His sisters whispered to each other. Even Tun looked uncomfortable, fidgeting with his watch. They sat down to eat, and the silence was unbearable. The clinking of cutlery felt louder than usual. Amara tried to start small talk, but no one answered more than a few words. Then, halfway through dinner, Tun's father cleared his throat. He reached into his briefcase, pulled out a brown envelope, and slid it across the table toward her. "You need to sign this tonight," he said flatly. Amara blinked, confused. She thought maybe it was something for Tun's work. But when she opened the envelope, her hands began to shake. It wasn't papers from work. It was a divorce agreement, already signed by her husband. Her heart dropped. For a moment, she couldn't breathe. She looked at Tund, hoping it was some horrible mistake. But he just sat there, staring down at his plate, saying nothing. The world around her blurred. The food, the laughter from another table, the clinking of glasses, it all faded. All she could hear was her heartbeat pounding in her ears. Her lips trembled as she whispered, "What is this?" No one answered. Her mother-in-law only folded her arms and said coldly, "It's better this way." Amara's hands gripped the edge of the table as tears burned in her eyes. That night, she realized the dinner wasn't a celebration. It was an ambush. Amara met Tund when they were both in university. He was the kind of man everyone noticed, smart, confident, always surrounded by friends. She, on the other hand, was quiet and hardworking, the kind of girl who believed in kindness and effort. They met during a group project, and from the first day, Tund made her laugh. He would walk her to class, bring her snacks during late study nights, and tell her she was the most patient person he had ever met. Amara fell for his warmth, for the way he dreamed big and talked about a future where they'd build something beautiful together. After graduation, they got married. It wasn't a big wedding, but it was filled with love and promises. Amara thought they would take on the world side by side. At first, life was sweet. They rented a small apartment, shared late-night meals, and laughed over burnt toast and tight budgets. But slowly, things started to change. Tun's family, especially his mother, had a strong hold over him. She never liked Amara much. From the very beginning, she compared her to other women. "You don't dress like a wife should," she would say. Or, "Tun deserves someone who understands how to manage a real home." Amara tried her best to please her. She learned her favorite recipes, helped with family events, and stayed polite no matter how cold the older woman was to her. She told herself that love meant patience, that if she kept trying, she would eventually be accepted. When Tun's career started taking off, he became busier and prouder. He bought a new car, changed his wardrobe, and started spending more time with his colleagues. Amara was happy for him, but she couldn't help feeling left behind. She had dreams too. She wanted to work, to build her own path. But every time she mentioned it, Tund brushed her off. "Why do you need to work?" he'd say. "Just focus on the home. That's more important." So she did. She cooked, cleaned, managed everything quietly, believing it was her duty as a wife. But in doing so, she began to disappear. Days turned into years, and the laughter they once shared faded. Conversations became short and polite, like two strangers living under the same roof. When Tund came home, he spent most of his time on his phone or laptop. When they did talk, it was about his family or his job, never about her. Sometimes, she'd wake up in the middle of the night and stare at the ceiling, wondering what went wrong. She remembered the girl she used to be, full of dreams, laughter, and confidence. But that girl felt far away now. At family gatherings, she often sat quietly while others talked over her. Tun's mother would proudly praise other women, Did you see how Beezy's wife started a business? While ignoring Amara completely. Once Amara overheard her mother-in-law telling a friend, Amara is a good girl, but she's plain. Nothing special. That night, Amara cried silently in the bathroom so no one would hear. Still she kept trying. She thought that love required endurance, that every marriage had difficult seasons. She prayed, smiled through her pain, and hoped things would get better. But things didn't. Tund grew more distant. When Amara began struggling with fertility, she went to doctors alone, too ashamed to tell him how scared she was. Each negative test broke her heart a little more. Sometimes she wondered if he blamed her. The way he avoided the topic, the way his mother's words became sharper. A woman's worth is in her home and children, she once said, made Amara feel small. She stopped sharing her thoughts. She stopped dressing up. She stopped hoping for comfort from him, because she no longer expected it. Inside, she felt trapped in a marriage where she was invisible, where her silence was the only thing keeping the peace. But through it all, she held on to one belief, that love was about patience. That someday, Tund would see her again, really see her, and remember why he fell in love with her. That was what she believed, until tonight's dinner. Back at the dinner table, Amara stared at the brown envelope lying in front of her. Her heart was pounding so loudly that she could barely hear her own voice when she asked, "What's going on?" No one answered at first. The room was heavy with silence. Tund kept his eyes on his plate, his hands clenched together. Amara looked at him, waiting for him to say something, anything. But he didn't. Finally, his mother sighed and said coldly, "It's better this way, Amara. You couldn't give him what he needs." Amara blinked, confused. "What do you mean?" His mother gave her a pitying look, the kind that cuts deeper than anger. "You know exactly what I mean. A man needs an heir. We've waited long enough." It hit her like a slap. They were talking about a child, about her infertility. Her throat tightened as the realization sank in. For 2 years, she had been quietly visiting doctors, hoping for a miracle. She had never told anyone how scared she felt, how lonely it was to face each test, each disappointment by herself. She had believed it was something she and Tund would face together. But clearly he had chosen to face it without her. Her hands trembled as she looked at him again. "Tund, say something. Is this what you want?" He didn't look up. His jaw tightened, and then in a low voice he muttered, "It's done, Amara. I've already signed." The words shattered her. Everyone was watching her now, but no one said a word. She could feel their eyes, cold, judging, waiting for her to break. Her mother-in-law pushed the envelope closer to her and said, "There's no need to make a scene. Just sign and move on." Amara's stomach twisted. Move on? After everything she had given up, her career, her peace, her pride. They wanted her to quietly walk away as if her love meant nothing? Tears burned her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She stood up, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. "You could have told me privately," she said, her voice shaking. "You didn't have to humiliate me like this." Tund finally looked up, guilt flickering across his face for a moment before he looked away again. "I didn't want it to happen like this," he murmured. "But you let it," she whispered. No one stopped her as she grabbed her bag and walked out. Her hands were shaking so badly that she almost dropped her keys. The night air was cold and sharp as she reached her car. She sat inside, gripping the steering wheel, her heart breaking in silence. She opened the envelope again, staring at the papers, her name printed neatly beside the word divorce. His signature already there. The final proof that the man she once loved had chosen to end their story without even looking her in the eye. Her phone started buzzing, his name flashing across the screen. Again and again. She didn't answer. Instead, she sat there for a long time, watching the raindrops hit the windshield. Her reflection stared back at her in the glass, a woman she barely recognized. The tears came then, quiet but unstoppable. Not for him. Not for the marriage that had already died long before tonight. She was crying because she had forgotten who she was. Amara returned home that night to pack her things. She wanted to do it quietly, with dignity. But as soon as she unlocked the door, her heart sank. Her mother-in-law was already inside, sitting on the couch like she owned the place. Beside her were Tund's 2 sisters, both with their arms folded, waiting. "Oh, you're here," her mother-in-law said coldly. "Good. We thought we'd help you pack." It's better to make sure nothing unnecessary is taken. Amara froze by the doorway, gripping her keys. This is my home too, she said softly. Her mother-in-law raised an eyebrow. Not anymore, dear. It was Tun's house before it was yours. Let's not make this more difficult than it already is. The word stung. Amara felt the air leave her chest, but she tried to stay calm. I just need to collect my things. I won't be long. But they didn't move. They stayed right there, watching her every step, whispering to each other as she went to the bedroom. When she opened the wardrobe, her hands trembled. She began folding her clothes, her eyes blurring with tears. She heard one of the sisters-in-law laugh quietly. I told you she'd try to take more than she should, she said. Amara turned around, her voice cracking. Do you have to talk about me like I'm not standing here? Don't make a scene, her mother-in-law snapped. You've already embarrassed yourself enough. That broke something inside her. All those years she had cooked for them, cared for them, defended them, and this was what she got in return. She remembered how, in the early days of her marriage, Tun's family often said he was lazy or careless with money. She always stood up for him. He's just under pressure, she would say. He's trying his best. She had believed that one day, he would do the same for her. That he would protect her like she had protected him. But he never did. Amara kept packing in silence. When she was done, she carried her bags to the living room. Her mother-in-law stood up, smoothed her dress and said, Good. Leave the keys with me. We'll change the locks tomorrow. Amara looked at her. The woman she had once called Mama. There was no kindness in her eyes, only victory. Without a word, Amara handed her the keys and walked out. Outside, the night felt cold and empty. She sat in her car, surrounded by the few boxes of her life, and for the first time, she allowed herself to cry, really cry. The kind of tears that come from years of silence and pain. For the next few days she stayed at a small guest house, barely eating, barely speaking. Her phone buzzed constantly, friends calling, her cousin trying to reach her. But she ignored them all. She didn't want to explain what had happened. She didn't want anyone's pity. Then one morning her friend Chioma showed up at her door. She didn't say much, just hugged Amara and said, Pack your bags. You're coming with me. Chioma's apartment was small but warm. She cooked for Amara, talked to her, and reminded her to breathe. You're not the first woman to be betrayed, she said gently. And you won't be the last. But you can choose how your story ends. At first, Amara didn't believe her. She felt too broken, too empty. But slowly, Chioma's kindness began to soften the heaviness in her chest. A few days later, Amara's cousin, who was a lawyer, called her. Amara, listen, he said. The divorce isn't final yet. He signed, yes, but it's not legal until you do. You still have a say. That surprised her. For the first time in weeks, she felt a spark of control return. That night, she took out a notebook from her bag, one she used to write in during university. She opened a blank page and just started writing. At first it was messy, anger, sadness, confusion, all mixed together. But as she kept writing, her thoughts began to clear. Each word felt like a small piece of herself coming back. She wrote about how she had lost herself trying to be the perfect wife, how she had accepted pain in the name of love, how silence had become her prison. She wrote until her hand hurt, but she didn't stop. It was as if every tear, every scar, was finally finding its way out through her pen. In the days that followed, writing became her escape, her therapy. She woke up early just to write before the sun rose. Chioma would smile and bring her tea, quietly proud of her friend's growing strength. Amara still felt pain, deep, heavy pain, but something inside her was changing. The sadness that once drowned her was turning into understanding. She began to see herself not as a victim, but as a woman who had survived. For years, she had lived in a house where her voice didn't matter. Now in this small apartment, she was rediscovering it. One page, one word, one breath at a time. And for the first time in a long while, she felt something she thought she had lost forever. Hope. A month later, Amara's phone rang. When she saw the name on the screen, her heart skipped for a second, stunned. She stared at it for a while before answering. His voice was soft, almost uncertain. Amara, can we talk? For a moment, she wanted to say no. But something inside her whispered that this conversation needed to happen. Not for him, but for her own peace. So she agreed. They met at a quiet restaurant, far from familiar faces. Amara arrived early, dressed simply but confidently. When Tund walked in, he looked nervous, like a man unsure of his next move. He sat down and cleared his throat. "You look good," he said awkwardly. "Thank you," she replied, her tone calm and steady. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then he leaned forward, his voice low. "I didn't want things to happen like this. My parents, they kept pushing me. They said it was for the best." Amara looked at him quietly, letting him talk. "I was confused," he continued. "They kept saying I needed an heir, that you'd never be able to." He hesitated, not finishing the sentence. "I just wanted peace, Amara. I didn't want all the pressure." She nodded slowly. "So you chose the easy way, letting them decide for you." He sighed, rubbing his face. "It's not that simple. I've been seeing someone." Amara's eyes stayed steady. "I know," she said softly. His head shot up in surprise. You knew?" She smiled faintly. "You forget that silence teaches you how to notice everything." He swallowed hard, guilt flashing across his face. "She's pregnant," he confessed finally. "I didn't plan it, it just happened." For a moment, there was silence. Tund waited for her to shout, to cry, to accuse him. But she didn't. Instead, Amara leaned back in her chair, her expression unreadable. Then she gave a small, tired smile. "Then you both deserve each other." His mouth fell open slightly. "Amara." She cut him off gently. "You made your choice, Tund. And now I'm making mine." He looked confused, almost desperate. "You don't understand. My family doesn't know who she really is. If this gets out." Amara tilted her head. "Who she really is?" He hesitated before speaking. She's my cousin's ex-fiancée. My mother never liked her, said she was a disgrace to the family. If she finds out." Amara's soft laugh stopped him. "So the woman your mother thought wasn't good enough for your cousin is now carrying your child?" Tund's face turned red with shame. "Please don't tell anyone. You know how they are. It would ruin everything for me." Amara stared at him for a long moment, then slowly reached into her purse. She took out her phone, opened her gallery, and slid it across the table toward him. On the screen was a clear photo of the divorce papers from that night, his signature bold and certain. "I'm not ruining you, Tund," she said quietly. "You did that yourself." He looked down at the photo, then back up at her. His lips parted, but no words came out. Amara pulled a pen from her bag and unfolded a copy of the same papers. Without hesitation, she signed her name neatly at the bottom. The sound of the pen scratching against the paper felt final, like closing a heavy door for good. When she looked up, her expression was peaceful. "Now it's done," she said. She stood up, adjusted her bag, and looked at him one last time. "I hope you find the peace you traded me for." And with that, she walked away. Outside, the air felt fresh, alive. The city lights shimmered softly around her, but she didn't need them. There was a light in her heart that had been missing for years. Each step she took felt lighter than the last. She wasn't just leaving a restaurant. She was leaving the weight of her past behind. For the first time in a long time, Amara wasn't someone's wife, someone's disappointment, someone's silence. She was herself again, free, steady, and whole. Months later, Amara is living in her new apartment, a bright, peaceful space filled with sunlight and plants. She wakes up early every morning, makes her coffee, and sits by the window. For the first time in a long time, she feels calm. She has started working again as a project manager, leading a small but growing team. Her confidence slowly returns. People at work respect her, not because of who she was married to, but because of her talent and dedication. Every evening, she writes in her journal. What started as a way to release pain has now turned into words of hope. Her friend Chioma reads one of her entries and says, "Amara, you should share these online." So she does. She begins posting her short thoughts about healing and strength, small honest messages like, "You are not broken. You are rebuilding." To her surprise, people begin to respond. Women from all over send her messages. Some say her words help them walk away from toxic relationships. Others thank her for reminding them that they deserve peace. Amara reads every message with a full heart. She joins a women's support group, sharing her story and listening to others. Each story reminds her of how far she's come, from crying in her car that night to standing tall again. She smiles more now, She laughs easily. One Saturday morning, while she's preparing breakfast, her phone buzzes. It's a message from Tund. I made a mistake. Amara stares at the message for a moment. Her heart doesn't race. There's no pain, no anger, only peace. She deletes the message. No reply. No explanation needed. Then she whispers to herself, smiling softly. Some doors don't need to be slammed. Just close them and walk away. Amara steps outside, feeling the morning breeze on her face. The city hums with life, and so does she. She's not the same woman who sat at that dinner table, confused and broken. She's stronger, wiser, and finally free. End of section. Tone: peaceful, empowering, hopeful. Amara visits her mother's house for the first time since the divorce. The moment she walks in, the familiar smell of her mother's cooking fills the air. For a second, she feels like a child again, safe, warm, and loved. Her mother sees her and rushes forward, wrapping her in a long, tight hug. Neither of them says anything at first. They just hold on. After a while, her mom whispers, "I'm so proud of you, Amara. You didn't break. You became stronger." Amara smiles softly, her eyes filling with quiet tears. "It wasn't easy," she says, "but I'm finally at peace." That evening, they sit down for dinner with her younger sister and little niece. The table is filled with laughter and gentle conversation. Amara feels a lightness in her chest, something she hasn't felt in a long time. Halfway through dinner, her niece looks up at her with big curious eyes and asks, "Auntie Amara, are you happy now?" Everyone at the table pauses for a moment. Amara looks at the little girl, then smiles, a real, calm smile. "I'm learning to be," she replies. After dinner, Amara steps outside to the porch. The sky is painted with gold and orange as the sun sets. She takes a deep breath, feeling the soft evening wind brush against her skin. For the first time in a long time, she doesn't think about the past or what she lost. She thinks about what she's gained, herself. As the last light fades, she whispers to herself, "They handed me a divorce that night, but I signed my freedom instead." She smiles watching the sunset, free, peaceful, and finally whole. Hi besties. Sparkling Heart, thanks so much for watching till the end. Your support means everything. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more emotional stories. See you in the next one. Waving Hand Sparkles.